Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Calgary, Alberta, Thursday, August 25th. I'm glad to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. We're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. And the chat room is open. I just barely got in here and had some problems getting into BTR here today. So, yeah, I appreciate everybody tuning in. We're still looking at Robert Berney's web pages. I'm looking at the inner child healing work, and that's what I'm interested in because that's sort of where I'm at in my healing journey. Robert Berney, he's a codependence therapist. He's a grief counselor. He's an author. He's written a book called Codependence: The Dance of Wounded Souls, and he's a spiritual teacher. So really, he's some great information on his website, www.joy2meu.com. And that's if you go to his site index, you can see he's got a lot of information there. So, but I've been looking at his web pages for about, I don't know, over 2 months now. And there's a whole lot of information on here regarding codependency, boundary work, inner child healing, relationship stuff. And so, it's worth taking a look at. I hope everybody will take a look through there and see if there's something that pertains, to, or something you're interested in looking at. I'm working on my inner child healing, and that's why I'm doing this particular work and spending so much time on it, right? So you have to listen at your own discretion. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a therapist. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my shows here on Blog Talk Radio. And, I'm just, talking about abuse. Abuse is a sensitive subject, right? So you have to know what's good for you to listen to, and you have to be okay with the information, right? I mean, if you're a survivor, you're just starting out on your healing journey, this type of material, any kind of thing like this can trigger you. You have to know, what your triggers are, and you have to know that, if you're not that far along in your healing journey, that things like this, you want to be careful listening to. And you have to know that you're, that you're okay, that you're not going to hurt yourself or hurt somebody else or, become, sort of regress backwards in the healing journey, right? So that's the issue. So be careful what you're listening to, and everybody else listen at your own discretion. I'm talking about abuse. It's a very sensitive subject. And also, young people under the age of 18, you should have permission to listen to my shows from somebody like an adult. Like, have an adult listen to the show with you, and then, they can help you make a decision whether you should be listening to my shows or not. My shows are not for younger children, and they're not, there's a whole lot of adult content on my shows, even though it's all about child abuse, stopping child abuse, and my own story, and, I just think that young people should be protected at all times. So if you're under the age of 18, I just ask you have, someone listen to the show with you. Hopefully who's like an adult, somebody who cares about what you're doing online, and they can help you make a decision whether you should be listening, right? So I appreciate that. So we'll get right into this. This is from www.joy2, that's the number 2, mbU.com, /fear, FEAR.html. And this is, I just popped that in the chat room there. This is the recovery process for inner child healing through the fear, the third part of what Robert Berney was talking about, as far as there was 3 pieces to the inner child recovery process that he was working through. And Robert Berney's a survivor too, and so he sort of gives a lot of his own process in the whole thing, and what he experienced, what he found. And so he talks about taking power away from the fear, and also writing about fear, things like this. We already went through all that. Where we left off was an innocent little child, and he was saying, excuse me, yesterday he was saying, and we're reading through it, says, it all goes back to being afraid that if I do it wrong, I will not survive the shame and pain of being imperfect, right? It all goes back to a little child who was terrified of his own father and could not count on his mother to defend him from his father. And the little child whose higher powers were wounded and were reacting to life out of their fear and shame. So this is Robert Berney talking here. And he says that fear is not rational. It's not logical. It's not conscious. It is an emotional reaction caused by an early childhood trauma. And so he says the fears are not stupid, they're not ridiculous. He says they are the result of the emotional experience of a little child, and that child deserves and needs compassion, not judgment and shame. So when we judge ourselves, we are abusing that little child inside of us. So when we are impatient with ourselves, we're dragging that child behind us as we run to get, quote unquote, there to the outcome, to the destination that will make us okay. So that's what he was talking about. And basically, if by judging and shaming ourselves, really all we're doing is doing the same exact thing that happened to us as children, being judged and being shamed and being made to feel bad about ourselves. And he talks a whole lot about, the dysfunction in society and the fact that society is very dysfunctional, really, and that the judging and shaming, we almost can't help ourselves from doing that because that's what society does, right? We're just sort of brought up, and it's just to behave a certain way, and it's all very dysfunctional. It's all very, I don't know. He calls it the disease, codependency, and really, when you actually look at it, it's very true. I just see so many examples of it, in my life. Not even just from, not even just from my family, right? My abusive, codependent family. I see it everywhere. In the workplace, I see codependent people everywhere. But see, I didn't know what codependency was. But once I started studying up on it and really looking into what it really is, I started to realize that pretty much, I don't know, 3/4 of the people I've ever met in my lifetime are codependent. And it's just because that's how the world is. Right? It's a behavioral problem. It just keeps getting passed on generation to generation. And it's because people don't recognize it. They don't know what it is. And everybody ends up being very unhappy and very miserable at the end of the road because they're living. There's all these issues that people have, whether they were abused or not, and it's very much societal. So it's not just individuals. It's what's wrong with our world, right? And so I really like what Robert Birdie said because he's really talking about the big picture, and it's very true. Let's have some coffee here. So he says, in early recovery, this is where we left off yesterday, he says, in early recovery I learned to catch myself every time I heard myself calling myself stupid. So he says, I would change it to silly. I couldn't go from calling myself stupid to calling myself a blessed child of the goddess in one step. So I substituted silly in order to be less abusive to myself. In order to start decreasing the shame and judgment I was laying on myself and the innocent child within me. So he just changed it to something that he didn't feel was such a big deal. You know what I mean? So instead of calling himself stupid, he just changed it to silly. And this is the issue. These inner child tapes that run around. Many survivors who've been abused have these internal critical parent voices. Really, that's what they call them most of the time. And these are critical inner parent voices will always tell you pretty well the same thing you were told as a child. Oh, I can't do it. I'll never make it. I'm too this. I'm too that. All this negative stuff, whatever it is. And especially if you've been abused, you may have heard some really horrific stuff. I talk about that all the time on my show. Stuff that was really bad that you never should have heard and was really completely false and wrong. But a lot of times those critical voices, those critical parent voices within us will, they'll just pop in. It's almost like, obviously we don't do that on purpose. It's just something. It's a scarring, I believe. It's the trauma of and the scarring on the brain is what I really believe it is. And so these things will pop into our head at just any time we think, oh, I've made a mistake. Oh, look at me, I'm not getting done what I need to get done. Or, well, I should have been here by now. Or, just kind of whatever it is, whatever it is in our life that's going on. You know what I mean? Like whatever we're just not happy with, or we're feeling that we're not doing a good job in, or maybe somebody's telling us that we're not doing something right, or making us feel a little bit lesser than. Those critical inner parent voices can really come in and do some damage. You know what I mean? Because all of a sudden, you're starting to hear negative stuff about yourself and not really thinking about positive stuff, and it can turn really negative really quickly. And I know over the years, I've really had to combat that, and even today I still hear it. You know what I mean? I still hear the same things. Especially if I'm feeling tired or feeling down, or I'm having a hard day, and maybe something happens between me and my sweetheart, or maybe something happens, maybe because I can't get a job, or whatever it is. These voices will come in, and it's generally just this really horrible stuff. You know what I mean? That it's like, okay, this is not based on reality today. This is from my childhood. This is not me today. And yet I listen to these voices, but now I'm 4.5 years into my healing journey. I've actually got a really good control on it. I realize where it's coming from, and so I don't pay a whole lot of attention to it. Basically, what I do is just negate it. I just say I'm none of those things. I'm trying as hard as I can, and I'm a good person, and I'm none of those things, right? Those negative things. We have to make sure that we're not listening to that. That super negative voice inside that's just always running us down, whatever it may be, right? And so he says, it was not stupid or wrong that I fell into the judging, resisting, shaming, running around the hamster cage cycle of the disease dynamic. He says it was a little silly and entirely human. It was a natural, normal part of being a recovering codependent. It was a part of the process of learning, teaching, remembering, reminding. And so he says, I was afraid, fear is part of this human adventure we're experiencing. It is through changing our relationship with our own fear that we transform being human from an ordeal to an adventure. So this, Robert Burney was talking about earlier, like last week and whatnot on some of his material here, dealing with codependency and fear and inner child healing work, saying that people shame themselves just being human, right? It's like, okay, we're not allowed to make a mistake. You know what I mean? Oh, we must just be so horrible. Like things that I might tell myself, like I'm just the worst. Like how could I possibly even? I could. Any number of things could be going on. I'd be like, how do I can't. I don't even deserve to be here on the earth. Just shaming myself for being human. But that's a lot of that stems from the abuse that I suffered, and that was being told that I didn't belong here on the earth, that I should have died by my mother. My mother was always telling me that stuff, and that she wished I would have died and things like this, right? So I grew up thinking that. I actually grew up believing that I should have died, and that it would have been, by the time I was 10, I was wishing I had died. I was like, okay, people, you have really done your best to kill me. Please do. You know what I mean? Because I am in pain and I need out. You know what I mean? I'm in every kind of pain I can think of, and you got to get me out. Go ahead, hit me one more time. Just that one more solid blow that'll take me out, and I can go on to make my peaceful way out of this stupid place. I was so miserable by the time I was 10 years old, And it's hard to come back from that. It really is. I didn't have any support to do it. So I've had to do all this by myself, and of course it's pretty well, I would say, why it's taken me this long to get where I am today. You know what I mean? Just deciding to live instead of just killing myself like two of my brothers did, or giving up like my mother did. Right? There's a couple of my siblings who are doing okay, but that's because they're in denial. They're, one of them I think just made peace a long time ago, and the other one, he's old, right? But the other one is just around my age, and she's in denial. So she's got her own demon space, right? But the thing is I mean, we shame ourselves for being alive. It's like, look at me, I'm just so disgusting. I should have just never. I've actually heard people say this. I've actually heard people say this. Things like this. I'm so disgusting. I don't even deserve to be alive. I mean, how can we think that? You know what I mean? Like this is absolutely really bad that people think these things, because this is not the truth. And we're believing a lie that was told to us, right? Somebody has made that person feel like that. Somebody has made that person feel like they're so disgusting that they shouldn't be alive. Someone has maybe even told that person that they're so disgusting they shouldn't be alive. My mother used to say stuff like you're just a bad kid. You should have died along with the other stillborn babies. This was when I was really little. And, I didn't know what stillborn babies were, and I didn't even realize that she had two stillborn babies before me. But I made it, and they didn't. And so my mother, I believe, was actually aborting those stillborn babies. She wasn't eating. She wasn't sleeping. My dad was raping her. It was absolutely horrific. The social workers were involved and everything. And she it's like she lost two babies before me and then had me, and I made it, And she didn't want that because she was born out of rape, right? So she used to make sure she told me that. She'd be like, well, you're just a rape child anyway. I never wanted you, and she'd like beat on me and slap me around. And I was like, I couldn't understand. I was like, Mommy, I love you. You know what I mean? Like, why are you doing this to me? I used to want her to hug me and hold me. I used to like go up and try to hug her legs because she would never pick me up. And I just wanted to hug her, so I just needed that connection. I didn't get it, right? That whole bonding thing. And I was really always trying as a child to get it, so I think, that's a lot of the problem is she couldn't handle it, so she would just beat on me. She'd slap me around, throw me down. And she would just say, get away from me, I don't want you touching me. Like she was, that's what she would do to me. And then she would call me, this rape child. She'd be like, you're just a rape child. I never wanted you anyway. You should have died with the other stillborn babies. You didn't deserve to live. And especially when I got older, she really, brought on the hatred stuff, and it's like, calling me names and beating me up, and the issue is I carried that with me forever, except for I knew that I was not a whore, I was not a slut, I was not all these things that she was calling me. But in the meantime, what it did was it told me that she didn't want me to live. She wanted me to die. So I started to realize that I didn't I started to think in my own mind I didn't deserve to be on the earth. I must have been such a lowly, bad child. I mean, it's like, my parents were trying to kill me. My dad actually did try to kill me and my sister one time. I must just not even be, I must not count. You know, like where do I belong on this earth? You know what I mean? So it was a real huge problem for me to come back from that. But the thing is that was done to me. I didn't do that to myself. So now as an adult, I need to learn how to, excuse me, I need to learn how to not play those games. Because that is such garbage that somebody would do these things to children, but they do. Or do this to anybody. I mean, even in domestic violence and domestic assault situations, people telling people the most hurtful, ugly things, and these people start to believe it. It's psychological scarring, psychological damage. Like, people start to believe that they must be so disgusting. They don't even deserve to be alive. That's the extreme of what Robert Bernie's talking about. But I'm taking it to the extreme because this is so incredibly important that people realize that was wrong. And that none of us deserve to be treated like that. And that is the other people's illness, not ours. Right? I mean, all that stuff that happened to me was my mother's mental illness and my dad's mental illness, my brother's mental illness, and all of my other siblings' mental illness. Otherwise, they would have never, ever done that to me. You know what I mean? And so I'm realizing now, as an older adult, hey, we have choices. We can make choices in this world. And there's no good reason to treat somebody like that. And so I'm very careful to try to not hurt people myself. Like, I mean, I definitely don't let people run me over. Like, I've been talking about that the last few weeks on my shows. But I don't let people run me over. But man, I try to be respectful and treat people with dignity because that's what people deserve. And we got to, you need to demand it. You need to command it. You need to respect yourself, and you need to have dignity for yourself, and you need to expect others to do the same. You do deserve to be here. We're a human being. We're all human beings doing a human experience together. And I love what Robert Bernie has to say. It's not shameful to be human. We've been given this beautiful gift, we have to go back and undo and unlearn all that garbage that we were told before. Is that we don't count, we don't matter, we're ugly, we're useless. Whatever we were told as children that just wore like a little pathway in our brain that just doesn't, it's just there, right? We have to actually go back and redo that. So that's just what I'm doing. Like, I'm really working on changing my behaviors, changing my perceptions, and negating all of that horrible, horrible stuff that people have done to me over the past, by saying, you know what, that was not true. I was not an evil, rotten kid. I did deserve to be alive, I didn't deserve to be treated the way that I was. None of my siblings did, but I'm just talking about me right now, you know what I mean? Like, this is horrible that people would do this to a child and make them feel like they should just kill themselves, right? That's why 2 of my brothers killed themselves. My parents were suicidal, For me, it was just like, well, everybody else is killing themselves. I may as well just kill myself too. I must just be this evil, horrible, rotten person. And I was in pain. Mostly pain in my body, not in my body, mostly pain in my heart. I mean, I have pain in my body, but that's tolerable. But it's the pain in my heart, that was killing me, right? It was killing me up until the age of 41, because I realized I was still sitting around, wanting to self-injure, still sitting around, wanting to plan my suicides. And I thought, nobody's going to care if I kill myself, Like, I was sitting on the couch. If you go back and listen to myself, there's about 800 shows here, so I mean, you'd have to really dig through. I need to actually go back and categorize what I was talking about, actually. I probably will do that at some point. I mean, I was sitting around thinking, nobody's going to care if I kill myself, Well, there's not one person, at the time, 4.5 years ago, I thought there's not one person on this planet that's really going to care or understand the pain that I'm in and why I would choose to leave this earth from the age of 10 years old on. Because nobody was in my shoes. Nobody can be in my shoes and see where I've been, right? And I thought, there's nobody going to care. And my own dysfunctional family, like, I knew that they wouldn't care, so that wasn't necessarily a call to attention. It was kind of like, I thought, why am I doing this? Because I knew I really didn't want to kill myself, right? But I wanted out of the pain because it was just hurting. It was hurting so incredibly bad, just tearing me up, ripping me up. And I thought, man, how am I going to do this? Like, I got to change something. Something has to change because obviously I can't keep going like this. Because one day I will kill myself. I'll just follow through with one of my plans. Because I had some very interesting plans which I won't talk about. I'm not going to give anybody any ideas, but I'm telling you, I'm serious. I had always been planning my suicides, and and I mean any number of ways, because I had been planning my suicide since I was 10 years old, right? And it wasn't just one way. I mean, I had a myriad of ways and ideas, and I would actually move and really work towards following through with them. You know what I mean? Move different places places in the States, move to different countries. It's kind of like, yeah, I can disappear and I can just end this pain right now, you know. And I mean, it's so incredibly harsh what people do to people, and then there's no justice, there's no help for those children, and then we grow up and then we have to deal with all this, and there isn't anybody really, except for maybe if you find a good friend, who can help you or who even cares, you know. And that's the truth of it. We're on this garbage run by ourselves, you know what I mean? And if you find somebody who cares, don't shit on them, right? Because they will, you know, don't hurt them in the process of you being hurt. Because it's hard to find people that really do care. And if you do find somebody that cares, don't hurt them in the process, because you're hurting, right? You know, you don't. It's hard to find good people. So, you know, when you find somebody who you know is a good person and you can trust, you know, you make sure you treat them right. And the issue is, it's hard to be around somebody like survivors who are really, you know, who are, you know, definitely have had these issues because of the abuse that we've suffered and are still having a hard time. Many people can't even be around us because it's too much. And I've been told that. It's just too much. It's too hard. And people just can't, you know, because they can't get into your head. They really don't know where you've been. They don't know where we've been. I know where most people have been just because I've been there. Yeah. So, I mean, you can talking to somebody like me is perfectly fine, because I totally know where you've been. But so a lot of people don't. And they can't get into that headspace, and they don't understand why a 10-year-old child would want to kill themselves. They really don't. You know what I mean? Like, they wouldn't understand what it feels like to be raped and sodomized at the age of 8 years old and have their mother tell them it's their own problem, they got to deal with it. You know, the pain and the anguish and the torture, you know, and just all of the abuse from my mother, from my dad, you know, just went on and on and on. Most people would not understand, like, where I was at the age of 10 years old in my mind, you know, and why I would have been feeling the way I was and doing what I was doing. So it's hard for people to get that, you know. And so and then people would say, well, you know, think of my behaviors at the age of 41, just before I started my healing journey, and think, why would you be doing that? Why would you want to self-injure? Why would you want to you know, plan your suicides? What could be so bad? It's like, well, let me tell you. You know, have somebody say, what could be so bad? Well, let's sit down, and that's what I decided to do is start talking about this stuff. That's what can be so bad. You know, that's why so many people are so wounded. You know, because they've been so incredibly damaged as children and never ever should have happened. And we don't have to feel that shame and judge ourselves harshly because of it. Because none of this was our fault, you know. Like, none of this was we didn't do this to ourselves. And sadly enough, we paid the price for it, you know. Somebody else's dysfunction, somebody else's disease, somebody else's, you know, mental issues, somebody else's anger problems, you know, whatever the issues were, you know. Like, we pay the price for that. That's really unfortunate, because it certainly wasn't our fault. And so why are we going to continue to hurt ourselves? That's about, like, 4.5 years ago, that's where I was at, and I decided, I said, my God, like, what am I doing? I'm doing exactly what my parents would have wanted me to do. That's to kill myself. They would have, my mother's in her grave, she would have probably, you know, I mean, it's sad to say, honestly, she was such an evil person that she would have probably laughed because she hated me. You know what I mean? And my dad is just so ignorant. He would have just been like, oh, well, we knew she had problems. It's like, yeah, okay, whatever, Dad, you know, fine. He's so mentally ill, it's like, okay, there's no sense in even talking to him. You know, and the rest of my siblings would have been like, well, yeah, we thought that would be the case. She killed herself just like her brothers did, you know. They wouldn't have cared, right? And they certainly are not here to support me today. Not in the way that would be helpful. You know what I mean? It's incredibly harsh that what people have to go through. And so, yeah, 4.5 years ago, I said, man, if I do this and I self-injure or I kill myself, all I'm doing is letting my parents win this fight. That's what my two brothers did. They let my parents win the fight because the social workers were brought in because my brother went to school with turtleneck on in the middle of the summer in New Mexico. Like, you don't do that, New Mexico is hot, man, and in the middle of the summer in a turtleneck, you don't go to school in a turtleneck. There's something wrong. Plus, he had bruises on his face, and so the teacher took him to the nurse and then the school nurse, and the school nurse called the authorities, and because they took a look at him and he was all beaten and battered, and my dad used to have it in for him. That was my brother that raped me and actually sexually used me, but he was the one that actually the report was made on because my dad had it in for him, and my dad used to treat him so horrifically. I believe that's why my brother was so screwed up the way that he was, right? And it doesn't an excuse for him to go ahead and rape and sodomize me and sexually use me. No, not at all. Do I feel okay about it? No, I really don't. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna ever excuse away type of behavior and what happened to me. But the thing is my siblings, they killed themselves. Like they went through the most horrific abuse. Social workers were in for a little while. They didn't remove us from the home. They should have. Stupid, but that was back in the 60s, right? They weren't really doing much, and they still aren't today. And I'm not running anybody down. I know that probably people who are listening who have been social workers and whatnot. There are good people in every area of life. There's good people everywhere that do try to help, but there's also people that really don't. And there's also systems that don't work. It's not an insult. It's just the way that it is. And so it's unfortunate that so many kids do slip through the cracks, but we were just some of those kids, right? And I fight to live now. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to let my parents win this fight. No way. You know what I mean? Like, I refuse. So now I'm so deterred. I'm such a stubborn person that I'm like, you know what? I'm going to come out of this hole. I'm going to come out of this healed. It may not be able to be completely healed, but I'll be at the end of the road. I'm going to be able to find a lot more peace and a lot more joy about my life and be able to move a lot more forward and feeling better, and that's the issue, and that's what I'm happy with, right? And that makes me happy, and I hope that that's the case for you. If you're, that you won't give up and you won't allow the abuse that you suffered as a child to take over your life and to destroy your life, because that's exactly what it's designed to do, right? So, whatever you do, don't ever give up and look for those better days. If I can do anything for you, let me know. I'll be around today. You can catch me on Facebook or wherever, and otherwise, I'll be back on tomorrow morning, same time, same place, one child abuse survivor to another. Have a great day, everybody, and make sure you do stick around. If you have to, you call the crisis line. But you do whatever you have to do to keep yourself here and get yourself some help. You certainly deserve it, right? Have a good day. Talk to you soon.